Hello soul buddies, welcome back to the channel. Hope you all are doing great. If today is your first time on this channel, you are highly welcome. My name is Joy and I am the convener for this channel, Way by Anguli. As promised, here is the second part of how to sew a 10 pieces blouse with a godet. In this tutorial, we will be learning how to stitch our panels together with the godet in between. If this is something you want to learn how to make, I recommend you keep on watching. Now let's dig in. The joining of this blouse is very self-explanatory, but for the sake of our beginners here, I'm going to go into all the details. As you can see, I've already gone ahead to iron the interfacings on all my pieces, and here I'm joining them together, starting with the godet in between. Now I'm putting the godet from the side seam all through to the back, like I explained in the part 1 of this video. So the first thing I've gone ahead to do here is to stitch the back. As you can see, I'm stitching the back, and I've gone ahead to sew in the godet at the center back, at the side of the back, and also in between the center back and the side piece. So that's what I'm doing. The first thing I've done is to stitch down the godet in between the two pieces like you're seeing, and then now stitched the complete dress. So this is the back piece. I'm starting with the back piece. After doing this, I'm going to go ahead and stitch down the godet on the center back and also on the side seam. Now for more effect, I ironed double layer of interfacing on my godet and also on the flare parts of this top, on the flare part of the blouse, just to give it more thickness at the flare part. So I doubled the interfacing at that part. Now, as you can see, while stitching the godet down, I made sure not to sew through that godet so that whenever I'm ironing, I can open up the seam easily and iron. So yeah, I'm sewing the center front of my front piece, and that center front part doesn't have a godet, so that's why I'm just sewing all the way through. Now I ironed a padding. Remember in the part 1 of this tutorial, I mentioned that I'll be using a fleece interfacing for the padding area, which is why you are seeing that white stuff at the bust area. That is the fleece interfacing, and I used double layer of fleece interfacing for the padding area. Now, as you can already notice, I didn't iron it all through I didn't iron it to the edge of the fabric like so. I made sure to leave a seam allowance of 0.5 inches just before ironing it, so that while ironing, that part does not come out too bulky in front. This is just like a professional trick I use to make my dress come out smooth and not too bulky. So that's what I've gone ahead to do. So yeah, I'm sewing down the side panel of this dress. Remember, the front has 6 panels, so I'm sewing down the side panel of that dress. So this is me doing the same thing I did for the main fabric on the lining. So the lining is just a replica of the main fabric. There's no difference between the main fabric and the lining. All you did on the main fabric, you're going to go ahead and do the same on the lining, stitching down the piece together and making sure that they do not cross each other. So when you're ironing the seams open, it will be easy to iron. So that's why you see me sewing down the godet. Then when I am joining it from the up down through the godet, I skip that part where it's supposed to cross over and then continue my stitching. So you are going to see me do that here. As you can see, when I got to that part, I made sure to jump it before stitching all the way through. It's just a trick. It doesn't mean that if you sew on it, it's going to affect anything. The only difference is that you will not be able to press open your seams, especially at that point where the gorget meets with especially at that pointy part where the gorget meets with the two-piece it is being sandwiched into. So it's just, you know, an extra thing I do to make everything come out clean and neat. So like I said at the beginning of this tutorial, the stitching of this top is very self-explanatory. If you're an intermediate sewer or an advanced sewer, this shouldn't be a difficult thing for you to do, but I'm just taking out time to explain all the processes because of the beginners in the house. Because I myself, I could remember when I started sewing as a beginner, most of all these things looked so foreign to me. So that's why I'm taking out time to explain it, so that you don't get stuck along the way. So that's just what I'm going ahead to do. You know, sandwiching the gorget in between the fabrics or the panels, and then just sewing as I go. So yeah, this is me sewing the center front of the lining, just like I did for the front, making sure that everything is well aligned. Now at this point, I'm sewing the bustiers together. That's the side panel to the front panel. That's the first side panel to the front panel, just at the part where the princess that runs through the bust. To make this easier for me to sew, I also notched at strategic points, which you already noticed in the part 1, so that I'll be able to match up for easy sewing. So yeah, I'm sewing in the yoke, the green yoke. I also ironed a single layer of interfacing for this yoke part, and here I'm sewing it in like so. Now if you are somebody that has, you know, tried sewing yoke, you agree with me that yokes are always quite difficult to stitch in, especially if it has a very sharp point. But being that the center front of this dress was divided into two, it was quite easy for me to make. So that's also one trick for you to sew in a very neat yoke. When the center front is divided into two, you can always leave a 0.5 inch seam allowance just at the beginning of that of the beginning of your dress, where the yoke will meet with the center front. That way it's easier for you to manipulate and sew in your yoke without having any squeeze or any rumple stitch at that point. So that's what I went ahead to do. I didn't start stitching from the very beginning. I left a 0.5 inch seam allowance just at the top of the center front, so that I'll be able to fix in my yoke seamlessly. So as you can see, this is my yoke. It's looking neat and clean. My dress is coming in nice and clean, as you can see. In between stitching this dress, I also made sure to iron. Now the ironing part of this tutorial I did off camera because I didn't want it to be too long. That is why you didn't see me ironing. But just know that in between the stitching, after stitching, I always made sure to iron, especially before coupling it together, or before coupling it with the parts that would restrict my ironing. So I just hope you understand what I'm saying there. So yeah, this is me fixing the yoke for the lining. Like I said, anything you do for the main fabric, you should also do for the lining. There's no difference, just do the same thing. Because this dress, we are doing an inner sewing. That's all the stitches, all the rough stitches will be hidden inside. So the lining and the fabric has to be the same, just so that we can achieve this. So yeah, as you can notice already, this is my side seam. The gorget is starting from the side seam all through to the back. So before I started fixing the gorget at the side seam, I went ahead and shaped the blouse to my size. Remember, the side seam allowance is 1 inch, so that is why I'm starting that gorget at that point. My side seam allowance is exactly 1 inch 1.5 at the waist. I always make sure to leave enough allowance, because as a human being you tend to either add or trim down. So it's advisable to leave a little bit of allowance at the side, so that in case you add, you can always losing it to your new size. So that's why you see that part being a little big. But if maybe you're doing a ready to wear or something close to that, you can always trim it down to 0.5 inch or 0.75. So this is the gorget at the side seam. I'm sewing it just at the line of my exact body size. I didn't go to the edge of the fabric, because going to the edge of the fabric will mean that I'm adding to my size. So here, this is me joining the lining to the main fabric at the neckline. You see, our blouse is coming in nice and clean. This is me joining the lining to the main fabric. I've gone ahead to sew that down. Now I'm notching it to ease out the tension. After notching it, I'm going to go ahead and do a top stitch on that, so that when I iron it, everything is inside nice and clean. Now after the top stitch, I usually most times go ahead and trim off the excess allowance at that part that I notched. I always do this so that I will not have too much bulk at that neck area. But even if you don't do it, it's completely fine. But I always like to trim down to at least 0.25 inches. So now coming to the back, remember the back is going to have a back yoke, orange back yoke with 3 loops. So this is the loop. I'm going ahead to sew that down, making it as slim as possible. So after stitching this, I still went ahead to fold it again and then make it slimmer than it already is. So this is me folding it, giving it a double fold, and then stitching that before fixing it to the back yoke. So this is the back yoke I'm working on right now. So I just need 3 of these loops for the back button. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm using approximately 2 inches for these loops. So here, this is me sewing the neck part of this yoke. I cut the yoke into 4 pieces, that is 2 for both sides, so that I'll be able to use one to turn the other. Since it's a net, there's no need for lining, so you have to use the net as well to make your lining. So this is the part where the button is going to be on. As you can see, I'm not putting any loop on that part. This is the part where the button is going to be sewn on. That is why I'm not putting any loop. For the opposite part, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, but then with the loops in between those sharper points. Now when sewing this, I didn't back stitch because it was quite difficult to do so, and being a delicate material, so I had to just stitch, leaving those 2 ends of the thread that long, so that after that I can go ahead and tighten the knot so that it doesn't unravel. So yeah, what I'm doing basically is to just trim off the excess allowance. So that's what I'm doing, trimming it off to at least half of 0.25. So I'm doing that. I'm also notching this point like so, but then not cutting through the thread so that it doesn't unravel. The reason why I notched that point is to ease the tension, so that when I'm turning it into the right side is going to lay flat and clean without any tension at that point. So now coming on to the opposite side of this back, the side that is going to have the loop, I've gone ahead to first of all fix my loop at this point, at these places where the loop is supposed to be. I've gone ahead to fix the loops into these 3 places before doing the same thing I did for the other one. So buddies, if you're enjoying this tutorial, just a quick reminder, do not forget to hit the subscribe button, like our video, share it, turn on the post notification by clicking on the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we post new videos. Here on this channel we post videos every 2 days, so you get notified whenever we post videos. And if you have any concerns concerning your sewing, you can always drop them in the comment section below, and if we can do a tutorial for that, or I can go ahead and do an explanation for you. So just feel free to join us on this lovely family. Let's all learn together. Like I say, we always have a good time here on the channel, so please do not forget to hit the subscribe button so that you do not miss our videos. So yeah, like I said, I'm going ahead to do the same thing I did for the front, for the opposite part. Now after that, the next thing I'm doing is I've gone ahead to turn it to the right side, as you can see, and I also went ahead and gave it a press. While ironing it, I made sure to sandwich this net into 2 ironing fabric. You know, ironing directly on the net can burn your net because it's quite delicate and has some stretch in it, so it's very easy for it to burn the net. So you want to make sure to sandwich your net in between 2 fabrics and then pressing those fabrics. So I'm gonna have to iron it so that it lays flat and clean, and then I sealed the down part. That's the part where I'm going to be stitching it to the dress. So yeah, this is me basically stitching it to the dress. I'm gonna head to leave out my 1-inch seam allowance for the zip, and then placing it from that 1-inch seam allowance all through to the edge of this dress. Now this is me sewing it on the back parts of the dress. Remember, this yoke is going to be on the back part of the dress, so this is what it looks like. I love the finished look. Now sewing the lining in, sandwiching that yoke in between the lining. I also went ahead to measure up my 1 inch for zip. Remember, the zip is going to be sewn in between the lining and the fabric, so that's why I'm leaving that 1-inch seam allowance there. As you can see, while sewing, I go ahead to trim off any excess that is not needed. You know, you always trim off your excess so that you reduce bulk. we are trying to eliminate any amounts of bulk that will make our fabric not to lay flat nice and clean. So as usual, I've gone ahead to, you know, notch the neckline. I know some of you might be wondering, why do we notch? We notch especially in curved edges because we are trying to release the tension on that curved edges, so that when you iron it, finally iron it, everything, the tension is released and the curve is, you know, seen. So after stitching the second part, this is what the back looks like. You know, everything is still open. This is what the back looks like. This is what the front looks like. Like I said, the gorget started from the side seam all through to the back. That is why you're seeing it from that side seam. So yeah, the next thing I'm doing is to shape my top to my desired size, to my own personal size. Remember, my waist is 29, and that's what I've gone ahead to do. So I'm shaping it. Remember, we are trying not to sew through so that we'll be able to iron the seams open. The reason why I always insist on this is because when you iron your seam open, there is no tension on the parts, like there's no squeezing in front. Everything is just, you know, moving smoothly. Even with the excess, with this allowance bulk inside, once you skip that part without sewing through the gorget, everything lays nice and smooth. So as you can see, this is even before ironing and is already coming out clean. So this is me stitching the second part of that dress, making sure that everything is well aligned, and also pinning it down so that I do not miss out on anything. So yeah, I'm stitching it down, making sure everything is neat and smooth, and then turning to the other side and complete my stitch. So yeah, for the hem, after joining the two sides together, this is me sewing the hem from the center back all through to the center back. Now this is where the hemming gum comes into play. I've gone ahead to pin down my hemming gum from the beginning to the end on the lining. So you have placed the right lining and the main fabric right sides facing each other, and then the hemming gum on the lining. Then I'm gonna have to pin it, and now I'm stitching everything together. The reason why I emphasize on the lining is because it makes it easier for the lining to stay hidden inside your dress. Remember, the lining and the dress is the same size. Like, I didn't reduce anything, but you can reduce like as small as 0.5 or 0.25 at the hem, so that when you are stitching the hem together, the lining is smaller and it just pulls the main fabric inside. But here I'm not the line and the fabric is the same. The line and the main fabric is the same thing. That is why I'm, you know, using a hemming gum to help it stay hidden. So with the hemming gum now, after stitching on the lining and ironing it, it stays hidden without the lining poking out of without the lining poking out of the main fabric. So this is just another trick, and also it makes that edge very crisp and clean. You know, all these things are professional touches you give to your dress or to your top or blouse, and it just makes it come out clean. So yeah, we've gotten to the end of this. The part 3 of this top or of this blouse is on the sleeve, how to fix the sleeve of the blouse. I hope you enjoyed this. See what the back looks like, the back that we were trying to achieve. This is the finished look of the back, and here this is the front with our green yoke. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment, recommend our videos to your friends. Thank you so much for coming with me on this journey. Until next time, I remain my humble self, Joy Onovo, the tutor behind the channel Way by Ang Lee. See you in the part 3 of this video. Have a blessed day. Bye.